Dating a choir member seems like a really cool thing, right up until that relationship sours or starts getting in the way of you doing your job. In this video, I'm going to tell you the one thing you should absolutely not do if you're dating a choir member, and tell you the top 3 things that you need to do today if you're dating a choir member or if you're even thinking about dating one. Okay, so I'm about to help you out with this whole dating a choir member thing. And these are things that I had to learn like really the hard way. And if you get what I'm about to tell you, you will avoid all of those nasty breakups and all of that church relationship drama and avoid putting your job in jeopardy. So we've all been in those situations where you've been like checking out one of the choir members because she's kind of fine or whatever. And you know, she's probably feeling you too. So y'all start flirting a little bit, one thing leads to another, and then y'all end up dating. And inevitably, the very first thing that comes up and the biggest question in that relationship becomes, should we keep this relationship private or not? And it's a fair question because there's a lot of valid reasons why you might want to keep it private, not the least of which like a lot of messy church people all up in your relationship business and all of that. And I'm going to give you a definite answer to this question in a bit. But first, let me tell you the things that you absolutely need to do today if you're dating a choir member or thinking about dating one. So what you want to understand is that you are there first and foremost to do a job. No matter how big or small your responsibilities there as a musician, these responsibilities are your top priority. And there's always this tendency in these types of relationships to let that relationship like consume your thoughts and your mind and, you know, affect the way that you do your job there. I remember dating a choir member years ago, like when I first started out as a director of music at a church, and she was older than me and I was like young and impressionable. And I let everything in that relationship sort of like take priority and sort of drive what I did in my job at that church. If she liked a particular song, I would teach that song to the choir or praise team at the church. If I wanted to do a concert there at the church, I would let her tell me when, where, how, and why to do it. I even think I like changed the rehearsal date from like a Tuesday to a Thursday to accommodate her schedule because she started having some scheduling issues and couldn't be there. So I changed the rehearsal date for everybody to be on a different date. Needless to say, I wasn't making the best decisions for the department of music that I was over. And this brings me to the first thing you absolutely need to do if you're dating a choir member. And that is, you need to establish boundaries. You have to be upfront and let her know that your job comes first and you can't do things like show favoritism and all of that. Let her know that she's not going to be able to sing all of the solos and all of that, and that you're going to have to hold her to the same standards that you hold everyone else to. And the sooner you do this in the relationship, the better. Now, right before we get to the next thing you need to do, if you're getting value out of this video, or if you've gotten value out of any of my videos on this channel, do me a quick favor and hit the like button on this video. That really helps this video to spread and it lets me know you appreciate it, and I would appreciate you doing it. Now, regardless of if you keep that relationship private or not, which again, I'm going to answer whether or not you should do in a bit, there are going to be people that are just going to inevitably know about it, or they're going to suspect it. They'll see y'all like walk in together or see y'all giving each other the googly eyes and all of that, and they'll just put 2 and 2 together. And this presents a problem because, as I said, you got some really messy people at church. And as soon as they get word or suspect something like that happening, they're going to run and gossip it to anybody that will listen. And that's how a bunch of rumors get started, some that can really damage your reputation. That happened to me at another church I worked at years ago with this choir chick that I wasn't even dating. And, you know, we didn't even like each other like that. We were just cool. But because a lot of the messy church people would see us talking every now and then, they just made us out to be a couple. And the problem was that this girl had a bit of a negative reputation about her, which I found out about later. But I started to get associated with that negative reputation. And luckily, I was able to squash it before it got too bad and before it got to that one person that we all dread that kind of information getting to, which is the reason for the next thing that you need to do if you're dating or thinking about dating a choir member. And that is, let the pastor know that you're dating. Now, listen, you don't owe the pastor any sort of explanation or reveal of your personal relationship or anything like that. It's not that. This is just for good measure. Plus, there may be some policy against it or about dating choir members and all of that kind of stuff that you don't know about that he can share with you when you share that information with him. Or even he could like hip you to game on this girl's past and let you know what's up about her and all of that kind of stuff and whether or not you should think about dating her. But the biggest thing about this is that if that relationship goes bad or y'all stop talking or whatever, there's none of that behind the scenes kind of going to the pastor behind your back talking about you kind of stuff, because he already knows about it. Now, one more thing before I tell you whether or not you should keep that relationship private and on the low or not. And this one may be a bit controversial, but I had a friend of mine that was playing for this church many years ago, and the pastor of this church had recently been divorced, but he had also recently started dating a girl that goes to that church that was in the choir, right? And back in the day when churches would have their offering and people got up to walk around to put their offering in the offering tray, and some churches still do that now. But when that would happen and this girl would walk around to put her offering in the offering tray, the pastor would come down and meet her, and he would give her like this big, wet, sloppy, juicy kiss dead in the middle of the church in front of everybody. And of course, this made like a lot of people cringe. But the biggest thing about this was that a lot of those church members were still close to his ex-wife, which he had divorced. And that made them sort of look at that public display of affection as a sign of disrespect to them and her. And they started to lose respect for him as their pastor. And the lesson here is about how a lot of these church people a lot of times take sides when a lot of these split ups and breakups happen between couples, pastors and their wives, or even musicians and the people they're dating. So if you're dating a choir member, one of the things that you might want to consider is holding off on that public display of affection, or PDA as it's known, when you're at church and when you're at your job. Now, of course, I'm not saying don't show love and all of that. I'm just saying that it might be a good idea to hold off on that overly affectionate stuff that's like overly overt. And of course, that's going to be subjective from person to person, but the biggest thing about this is that when you're doing that kind of stuff and for whatever reason it stops because maybe y'all had a fight or something, those messy church people gonna get in your business again and gonna be like, well, she normally kiss him like when they come in, like why she ain't kiss him today? She must be mad at him because he cheating on her with that girl that be all up in his face every Sunday or some crap like that. Did I mention that church people are messy? Now, you've chosen to start dating a choir member. Y'all are in a relationship. Should you put that relationship out and let it be known, or should you keep it private and on the low? Well, to cut down on all the BS and not let that relationship get in front of your job or affect your job, you should definitely, absolutely, unequivocally, without question, keep that relationship not private. Let that relationship be publicly known, point blank, period. Now, when I say this, I don't mean call a meeting about it and let everybody know about it. What I mean is that you can casually mention it to people, when you're talking to other people or when it's appropriate. Or if somebody asks about it, because nosy people will ask about it, just tell them, yes, you're dating. And this is going to make the relationship much better for you and her, because you won't be in a situation where you feel like you always have to hide something, which can be a huge burden. And it may even cut out some of the pressure of you having to do the second thing I mentioned, which is telling the pastor about it, because in the case where you let it known, he's probably going to casually hear about it too. Now, even with that said, I think you should still tell him specifically about it, but that may cut down on the pressure of it. And although I know you understand that this is something that's important, one thing that you will not be able to do is go to the pastor and tell him this and have that conversation be effective until you know the type of relationship that you and the pastor should have. So watch this video right here so you know exactly how to deal with that situation.